We're back continuing with our alphabet series, and now we're here for R.
Pirate games.
No, it's the letter R.
Oh, letter R. This is Sesame Street?
What's up, everybody? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We are the Brothers Murph, and that's right. We're going to be talking about our top 10 games that start with R. If you've been following us on this journey, we've been going through every letter of the alphabet, and we are on R. We are getting to the back end here. There are a lot of really great... RST is going to be a good good bunch.
It's going to be hard to make some selections and stuff.
Although
so yes.
Q was surprisingly good, so make sure to watch that video if you haven't already.
Q's got some fire
It's got
games.
some fire there.
We are here for our favorite R games. Now, make sure you put your favorites in the comments below. It's been really fun to see people kind of go with us on this journey. So contribute to. It's never too late to hop into it, and in the meantime, we'll hop into ours. First up is Robinson Crusoe Adventures on the Cursed Island. This is a difficult cooperative game where you are trying to stay alive. Really, you are exploring this island. You've kind of been cursed. You're going to have a certain scenario mission, goal to achieve to succeed in the mission. And it's really about kind of exploring the island, figuring out kind of what resources are available, keeping your people fed, keeping morale high, and not, succumbing to exposure and the weather. This is one of those games that kind of a classic co-op game in that there are many ways to lose, and depending on the scenario, like the kind of intro scenario, you're trying to build this big fire, a signal fire to be rescued by a ship. But you need to kind of build shelters for yourself and cook food. And you have these different characters that are going to have different roles and abilities and things they do, and how you kind of decide collectively which actions to kind of focus on, which ones to, maybe prioritize for the next round is really going to be the crux of the matter. So this is one that we've really enjoyed. It's brutally difficult. So you have to be in that mindset where you're like, I'm down with getting, punished by a game that's going to be relentless and stuff. It's a really, really tough cooperative experience.
Our number 9 was going to be the Shem Phillips game, Raiders of the North Sea. This is the game is not super simple, but it's got a very simple worker placement mechanic. This is also a great game to teach people worker placement because it's very simple what you're gonna do. You're gonna take two actions. You're gonna take one of the workers in your pool and you're gonna place that worker on a worker placement spot, activate that action, and then you're gonna pick up a worker from a worker placement spot, and then you're gonna activate the action that you picked the worker up from. That's it. Those are the two things that you're doing. And so you'll always have one worker in your hand because you'll place it out, pick one up. And so they always say in the rules, like, if at the end of your turn you don't have a worker, something went wrong because you have to have a worker. And it's just very simple. It's very easy to understand that concept. And this is a game where you are raiders in the North Sea and you're out fighting and pillaging and stuff like that. It's all very abstract and very Euro, but you're kind of building up your clan, I guess, your kind of villagers, your townsfolk that you have, and you're going out, you're doing workplaces. There's stuff in the town that are going to be, again, various places to get resources, to get townsfolk, things like that, and then you can kind of go out into the world on those workplace spots, which will be different places that you are, raiding and things like that. So you're raiding, villages and all these different things, and you're getting booty and resources from that. But it's just a very nice worker placement game. Again, it makes it very easy to teach worker placement. This wasn't the first of the North Sea trilogy, but this was the first kind of big one. Is generally considered to be the best one. Although I might say Shipwrights in the North Sea, the new one, the Redux, might be my favorite of the North Sea trilogy. But nonetheless, Raiders is really great, and it's dead simple with that. Place a worker, pick a worker up, that's it.
Next up is Russian Railroads. We have Ultimate Railroads here. This is a worker placement game with a really kind of nice build of points as you go. You are going to be developing rails on different types of track on your player board, and you're kind of pushing them forward, and there's these different levels or kind of values of track that you hope to reach with your different engines that you can also gain through the game. But the kind of most base level track can never be leapfrogged by another type of track. So everything has to, if you want to get your high value stuff, your low value stuff, you have to develop that first. And that's kind of like signaling the progression through time. The thing that's fun about this game is in the first round, you might score 8 points. And then in the last round, after you have everything built up and you have bigger, stronger engines that can go further down these rails and you have more of your high value rails developed, you might score like 80 points, 90 points. So there's this really satisfying ramping up, and mostly what you're doing with your worker placement is you are developing these rails, getting new locomotives, upgrading them, getting these engineers that give you sometimes special worker placement spots to go to, different things like that, ways to double up the value of rails. And there's kind of all these different directions you can go that are going to, if you invest heavily enough in, can be quite valuable for you. So this is one that's just like if you're talking about ramp up and purely in points, it's one of the most satisfying out there.
Our number 7 is going to be Reef Project, which is actually a very new game, not even relatively, it's very, very new, but we really, really like it. This is a game where you are going around a big reef and you are trying to restore that reef. And this game is based in a decent amount of science where they have these things called reef balls, which are essentially like these big, it's kind of like, they look like cement balls, but they're made out of, I believe, like crushed up shells, and they basically can put them down and they can basically start reefs on them. They're kind of porous, so things that would be in a reef like coral and things that can latch onto them, and you can kind of start reefs with these reef balls. So you're basically going around the map, dropping down these reef balls, and then visiting these various islands to do these different actions. You're getting crew, your crew will give you all these different kinds of special abilities. You can go to various islands to then activate like all your green crew or all your pink crew, and have this like diver track. It's a board and dice game, so there's bumping tracks. So you're bumping up this diver track. You're just going around the board doing all these different actions. There's a lot of ways like combo things into other things. When you do these actions, you can sometimes play cards that will allow you to do a different action at that location that's usually stronger. And you're basically just doing all these things trying to get points by putting out your reef balls, by putting up your resources, all these different things. It's just a kind of a smorgasbord of a bunch of different things you can do to get points. It's kind of a point salad-y kind of game, but with a really, really cool theme on top of it. I really like games about restoration in terms of like restoring, the earth and the planet and things like that. Restoring reefs is something we should be doing. The Great Barrier Reef is getting bleached and stuff like that, and so this is a very important thing. I actually got to play this with one of our good friends, David, who is a diver and does this kind of stuff kind of as a hobby. And it was really, really fun to play with him because he was just like super, super jazzed that there was a game that was about something that he's really passionate about. And it also goes to show why having a bunch of different themes in games matters and why it's so powerful and beneficial to introduce people to games about themes that they enjoy, especially if they're new gamers. You're like, oh, you're a new gamer and you really, really like diving? Well, why don't we play this new game called Reef Project? It's about that, but I really, really enjoy it. We played this game a bunch since we've gotten it. It's just really, really enjoyable.
Next up is Remember Our Trip. This is a competitive game where you are friends trying to recall kind of the city map, essentially, like where you went on your adventures, what kind of buildings, hotels, and parks and things were where in the city map, and you are drafting these tokens to put out onto your player board. You have really specific restrictions as to where you can place your tokens, and if you make certain shapes with the tokens, like two parks next to each other, you can then confirm stuff in the central board that was actually in the location that you all visited together. So it's this weird kind of game to explain, but it's one that's really unique because the central board represents, I guess, your collective memory, or actually say it represents reality. You all maybe have ways of remembering things, but if you build a hotel or something, you put that into your player board, and those spaces that the hotel occupies on your player board do not have any tiles on the central player board, you can confirm a memory. You can put down a hotel in that spot, and that now becomes reality. That is where that hotel was, and players can then try to make sure their player board matches the reality of the city. But the reality of the city is not something that is set from the start of the game, and I think it's just super fascinating, and a game that we think everyone should try because it's just a different, unique experience. You might have something where you're like, I have a park where you say there are shops, and now those things are placed and now I'm kind of stuck. And so you're kind of dealing with this idea of memory, remembering stuff incorrectly or correctly, but also deciding in the moment, you know, maybe strategically, ways to place out tiles into that central board that confirm memories and make it maybe harder for your opponents to make a match.
Our number 5 is really a nitpick because Mike doesn't love this game that much, but this is gonna be Rum and Bones. I really like Rum and Bones. Rum and Bones was one of the first kind of like big like Kickstarter-y kind of games that I backed, and I just really enjoy it. This is a game where you are pirates, you have a pirate crew, you have a, well, it kind of depends. There's Rum and Bones, and there's a Rum and Bones like second edition or second tide, I think is what it's called, but it's the second edition, where they changed a lot of the rules. The original Rum and Bones was great, but had a lot of, it just needed a lot of fixing up. And so they kind of came out with the second edition with all new factions and stuff like that. And then you could buy like an upgrade version to turn the first edition into the second edition. And the second edition is significantly better. But you're basically gonna choose 3 crew, main crew, which could be like a captain, a gunner, a quartermaster, a bladesmith, not bladesmith, what are they called? I don't know, someone who's good with the sword. and then a brute, like a big person. And those are your kind of like main crew, but then you also have your like normal crew, which are kind of like, I think MOBA style is where they're just gonna be marching forward. You can't really control them. You don't say like, oh, now I'm gonna have this person go over here do this. They're just in a clump, and they just go like, boom, and they just move forward. If they come across something, they're gonna attack. It's just that. So you have this kind of MOBA style stuff, and then your 3 main characters are running around doing all this stuff, and you can control them however you want. It's really, really fun. Every single character has essentially abilities that they have, and then they can upgrade throughout the game, and you upgrade them by essentially fulfilling objectives and things like that. And I'm sorry, by getting money. You mostly get money by knocking out other crew. So every kind of crew person you eliminate, you'll get a coin for that. And then you can use that coin to then buy these upgrades to make yourself even cooler. But it's just swashbuckly. It's very like Pirates of the Caribbean, where it's like dun 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 dun, where you can like swing across the ship and like land on the other ship, but you also might land in the water. A lot of the factions in the game, because there's a whole bunch of them at this point, are like shark factions. It's very fantasy kind of driven. There are normal humans, but it's not just like, it's not very, not realistic, you know, is what I'm getting at. But it's just really, really fun. It's just a dice chucker, and the dice can go very badly. Mike is very bad at rolling dice, so he tends to not like this game nearly as much as I do, but I really, really like it. It was one of the first games that made me really want to paint the minis, because the minis are really, really cool. It's just great. It's one of those games where like I have the base game and then like one of the extra factions, but if I ever found this game for like cheap, like all the factions, I would probably just buy them all, because I think it's really, really fun. But nonetheless, that is gonna be Rum and Bones.
Next up is Res Arcana. This is a game where you're racing to 10 points, just 10 points, and you are doing this by usually drafting or getting a set hand of cards and trying to figure out a way to make these cards work to build a little bit of an engine for yourself to generate these points, to basically get these places of power and feed resources into them to generate all of these points. This game for us is one that we really we've been on a journey with it. When we first were playing it, we didn't really like that much. We were getting crushed by our opponents. And then we kind of started playing it more, and then you kind of start to see the ways that you can work these different little engines and find ways to make it viable for you. It is a game where you're gonna get, I think, 8 cards, you're gonna have a mage, and then you can get some monuments and other types of cards and stuff, but your cards are going to usually produce some kind of resource. Sometimes the resources that stay on that card you can collect at the end of the round. Some of them might give you income. They might give you abilities to, mitigate and change resources into another kind. And then there's these places of power, which usually take a lot of resources to buy. And then once you have them, you might be able to start to feed them specific resource types to generate points. So they'll have kind of a conditional value that will kind of increase over time as you continually invest in it. This is one that's just a really, again, a neat concept. You can play a variant where you draft cards, so you try to draft a hand that are gonna be really synergistic with each other. This card feeds into this one well and onward. Or the way I like to play it is where you each get dealt your hand of cards and you kind of got to figure out how to make it work. And I think that's a really interesting thing to kind of come back to time and time again.
I feel feel like Rush MD is a game that we're pretty big evangelists for. I don't really see many other people talking about it other than us, but I love Rush MD. Rush MD is a kind of spiritual successor to Kitchen Rush, which is also by Artipia Games. And Kitchen Rush, you are running a kitchen, and this one you are running a hospital. But this is a cooperative, kind of real-time worker placement game where your workers are sand timers, and each round of the game, you're gonna have 4 minutes to kind of do a whole bunch of different stuff, and there's gonna be 4 rounds of the game. So you're essentially playing like the game for like 16 minutes. The rest of the time is you just being like, oh God, that was so stressful. That kind of stuff. So there's some breaks in between, which is nice. But basically, you have these workers, which are in this case, nurses and doctors, and they have sand timers. So when you put a nurse or a doctor in a worker placement spot to do that action, you will flip over the sand timer and you cannot move that piece until the sand timer runs out. So it's just constant, everyone's moving stuff around, everyone has their own doctor, which is their color, and then the nurses are kind of like communal, where everyone can move nurses, everyone can do stuff with nurses. And then, but there's certain things that only nurses can do in the hospital, there's certain things that only doctors can do in the hospital, and you're getting patients in and you have to then diagnose them. And you're like, oh, this person's not feeling very good. Okay, cool. Oh my gosh, they need a new liver and their leg is broken. They need surgery. And so you kind of find out these things that they need, and then you have to go take them around and then cure them. It's really, really tough, but it's really, really fun because it's super hectic, because you're like, okay, we're gonna do this, then we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. Okay, everyone good, let's go, 4 minutes, and then it just chaos ensues. But there's all these like little mini games where you have to take this person to get an MRI, and the MRI is its own like little mini game. Then you need to get like blood cultures done, that's its own little mini game. It's super wild, it's super crazy and fun. And we like this a lot more than Kitchen Rush. Kitchen Rush we always felt was a little too hard. It felt pretty impossible, whereas this, even though in Rush MD there's more going on overall, it's more obtainable. It's more possible than it was in Kitchen Rush, and so Rush MD is just like bonkers fun. I just really, really love it. It's got insane production value where there's like these little syringes, and a lot of times you have to put stuff in the syringes, and it's just got great toy factor. It's super ridiculous, and it's just a blast.
Next up is Rococo. This is a game where you are journeyman and master and kind of apprentice seamstresses and making dresses and suits and providing entertainment and statues and stuff for this lavish party that's going to be happening. You are sort of sponsoring this party in a way by using your workers, which are played as cards, out to different areas to gain resources, materials like thread and different types of fabric, to make these awesome dresses for these kind of characters in a row. So they're gonna be kind of a contract. Someone has commissioned a certain type of garment to be made, and you need to provide the resources, those fabrics and stuff to make that. And at times you need a certain level of worker. You're gonna have basically apprentices, which can do some of the menial tasks like shopping for fabrics and stuff. You have your kind of journeymen that have been around a while and they can kind of do most of the types of actions. And you have your masters, who are people who can hire new employees, which are more cards, or visit the queen even, because they are a well-to-do, highly reputable figure. And there's even certain garments and places you can go in the central board that you can only access if the master's, the main person, the person whose name is on all these garments, is the one doing this action. So it's a really kind of fun setting where there's this fancy ball happening. There are all these different ways to kind of it's sort of area majority. You want, in all of the various rooms of this mansion, you want to have more of your stuff. Basically, you want to have your fingerprints on more parts of the party than anyone else. You want to be kind of the talk of the town. It's kind of the precursor to the red carpet now when they say, who are you wearing? You want to be the person that they're all talking about. And I think it's just a fun kind of setting. The way you work and upgrade your cards and get better employees will give you sometimes secondary actions you can do in addition to where you kind of place and stuff. There's just a lot of fun things with this in a cool setting. And there's even a new super fancy version. We only have the old one here, but that is Rococo.
If you know anything about us, you know that our number one is going to be Rajas of the Ganges. We love Rajas of the Ganges so much. Oh my gosh, it's just Euro goodness. And it does the whole thing that now Arc Nova does and a couple other games do, where you have kind of 2 tracks and the game will end once you cross those 2 tracks. In this game, you are kind of trying to get a mix of money, income basically, and then reputation. So income and fame is what it is. And those are your kind of 2 tracks. And there's a bunch of different worker placement spots around the board that will give you some kind of mix of that. You can be building buildings onto your estate, and that's gonna make you this famed kind of architect, and that's gonna give you fame. You can do these things like put out markets and then sell things like silk and spices and things like that at the market, and that's gonna give you income. You can build out your big estate. It's really, really cool. But this game is kind of, it's interesting where you have worker placement spots where you're placing your workers, but then the currency in the game is essentially dice. You have these big, beautiful, like translucent, chunky dice. They really crushed these dice. They're so beautiful. And so whenever you get a new die, like a blue die, you're gonna roll it and then put it in your collie figure. And then those are kind of your currency. So there's certain spots that will be like, this spot takes a blue die. So it doesn't matter the value on the die, it just takes a blue die. There's a lot of other places that require specific values or maybe a color and a specific value. And so you can manipulate those dice with like karma and different kinds of things to kind of get the dice that you need. You can turn in die, you go to the one spot, you turn in a blue die to get 2 purple dice. So you can kind of manipulate things like that, but you're kind of beholden to what you have on the dice. And so I really enjoy the concept of dice as a currency because there's a little bit of luck factor and having to like tactically figure out what you're gonna do with maybe not a great dice roll. I think is very, very interesting. And Raj the Ganges does that so well. It's beautiful. It's got beautiful Dennis Lohausen art. It's Marcus and Inca brand. The brands are such good designers. It's just, oh, it's so, so, so good. Every part of it, the look, the components, the gameplay, it's just absolutely outstanding and I love it. So that was our top 10 games that start with the letter R. Yeah. Indeed, some really good ones like Raj the Ganges, the easiest number 1 ever. It's just so good.
I love that game so much.
It's so good.
It's so good.
Insane. I think that was one of those games where we played it and then is one of those we played it immediately right afterwards?
Yeah.
I think we played it twice in a row, yeah. So nonetheless, that is our top 10 games start with R's. Again, put yours down in the comments below. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye.